The filibuster is the reason that TSA agents are still not getting paid. And it's not just them, it's Border Patrol, it's members of Secret Service, Coast Guard. There's a lot of people within the Department of Homeland Security who are currently not getting paid. And that's a tragedy, considering that most of them are still working and yet can't get a paycheck. And they can't get a paycheck because of Democrat obstruction, and that Democrat obstruction is a result of the filibuster. Then, of course, there is the Save America Act, which, again, over 80% of Americans believe in the virtues of voter ID. They believe that Americans should be the only ones voting in American elections, and that Americans should be able to demonstrate with very minimal effort, demonstrate that they are who they say they are. We're told that we have to show ID for a billion different things. Why should we not show our ID in order to vote? It makes absolutely positively no sense. And the vast majority of Americans agree with that. And yet here we are. Democrats can obstruct that. The filibuster is no longer a tool for debate. Perhaps it once was. If you go back to the middle of the 19th century, it forced bipartisanship, it forced compromise, it forced dialogue. Today, it is the exact opposite. It is no longer promoting dialogue at all. It is cutting off dialogue. It is no longer creating bipartisanship. We are more polarized than we've ever been as a nation when it comes to the political parties on Capitol Hill. There's always going to be some outliers, right? Unfortunately, we cannot get the filibuster eliminated. And it's dumb. And I'll explain why that's dumb here in a second. But let's first go to Byron Donalds, Congressman, likely future governor of Florida. Let's go to him and see what he has to say about the Senate ending the filibuster.
Look, number one, it's time for the Senate filibuster to end. We are witnessing what happens with that. It does not breed compromise. What it breeds is pure obstruction. It's not helping the country. There are many public policy issues that simply cannot be solved because Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats want to oppose Donald Trump and this administration because they want to score political points. It's not just the ICE agents that are not being funded. It's our border agents that are not being funded as well. They're not being paid. You have members of the Coast Guard not being paid, Customs not being paid, members of Secret Service not being paid. This is a travesty. And I get it. The Democrats want wide open borders and no enforcement of immigration and customs, but they lost the presidential election in 2024. And the number one reason they lost that election is because their radical open borders policy, which has led to the death of young women all across America at the hands of criminal illegal aliens. The United States of America and our people said absolutely not. So this rises and falls with Chuck Schumer. I would say for Leader Thune, he's got to wise up and realize this is not 1995 anymore. These aren't the old Clinton Democrats that you could get into a room and negotiate with in good faith. These people are radical. They are unhinged. They have an ideology that does not support the American people, our Constitution, or quite frankly, Western civilization. And so if they're not going to negotiate, then you got to just roll them over, get rid of the filibuster, pass the spending bills, and let's get that piece of the government back open. It's what Donald Trump has been calling for. It's what myself and many of my colleagues have been calling for. We have seen enough. And the Democrats, to be blunt, they're not living in political reality. They want to change the political reality of the United States, and they just want power. That's what this is about.
It's so true. They just want power. And the way that they can acquire power is to block the Save America Act. If the Save America Act were to pass, I'm not going to guarantee that Republicans will win every single election going forward. Leave it to the Republicans, the feckless GOP on Capitol Hill, to figure out some way to screw it up. But let's face it, let's just come out and say it bluntly. Voter fraud, despite what legacy media says, despite what the uniparty swamp says, voter fraud is a serious issue, and it greatly benefits the Democrats. So for them to be able to have power, to acquire it, and to hold it, they need voter fraud. They need voter IDs to not be in the picture. They need ubiquitous, mandated mail-in ballots. They need these ballots to be counted after the election for indefinite periods of time. They need to be able to to verify nothing. They need to be able to cheat. And this is why they are so vehemently opposed to the Save America Act. And believe it or not, this is why they're so vehemently opposed to the funding for DHS. People keep saying that, oh, this is about stopping ICE. No, it's not. This is about a distraction from the Save America Act. If we didn't have to deal with the government shutdown the way that we are dealing, then we could be hammering away at the Save America Act, trying to convince the people to call their Democrat senators, call their Democrat congressmen, and tell them, hey, we want this. We want voter fraud. What is your problem? And it's not just about calls. It's not just about the people. They also know that it would be a topic of discussion. The longer it goes, the harder it will be for them being the Democrats, to manufacture a faux outrage over, oh my gosh, minorities and women will be so hurt, they'll be disenfranchised by it. I'm not going to make the arguments for the Save America Act again, because I've done that ad nauseum. Other people have done it ad nauseum. You've already heard it. But at the end of the day, every argument against the Save America Act is either factually incorrect, we've seen a whole lot of that, or flat out racist and misogynistic. Because to say that, white straight men are the only ones that can really get voter IDs, and so that's why this is going to disenfranchise so much of the country, that's a bald-faced lie, and they know it. And anyone who actually believes that is stupid, period. I mean, if you think that that's the truth, that people are going to be disenfranchised because they have to show their ID to vote, then you're an idiot. And you could tell people that. Tell people, hey, if you really think that, you're stupid. Tell Hakeem Jeffries that. Tell Chuck Schumer that. He wants to say Jim Crow 2.0. What a racist thing to say. How racist do you have to be to say, oh, if we have to force black people to show their ID, then this is just putting them back in chains. It's like, what? I mean, no. I don't know a single person, not one person, who doesn't have an ID. And I know a lot of people. And I know a lot of people that are different, various minorities. I know a lot of women. I know people. They all got an ID. How do you get on a plane? How do you buy alcohol? How do you do anything without an ID? It's idiotic. Okay? It's either a lie or stupid or both. But again, I said I wasn't going to dwell on the Save America Act. You already know what it's about. You already know why they're doing what they're doing. And it is time to end the filibuster. Democrats have already tried to end the filibuster. And as J.D. Vance notes, there's a reason why they weren't able to do it, and there's a reason why they will be able to do it next time. They made an example out of people. Watch.
The problem is we actually do not have 50 senators, not who would vote for the SAVE Act, but who would overrule the filibuster. That's something that a majority of the Senate, you need 50 senators plus me, and I'm certainly on board, 50 senators to actually overrule this archaic rule and pass the Save America Act. Now here, this is the thing that I find so absurd about this. If you remember, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, two people I didn't always agree with politically, moderate Democrats, but very good people. They are the people who saved the filibuster when the Democrats were in control of the Senate just a couple of years ago. What happened to them? They were tarred and feathered by the far left. They were ran out of town. So when Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski say, well, we need to protect the filibuster because the Democrats, they're not going to do it, so we shouldn't do it either. The Democrats ruined the career of Kyrsten Sinema for not overruling the filibuster. They're going to do it. So we might as well do it now to enforce the protection of the American electoral system. It's the dumbest political argument I've ever seen. I promise you, Benny, I would bet every dollar that I own that the next time the Democrats have control of the Senate, they will break the filibuster, pack the Supreme Court, and destroy this country. We have to do it now in order to save the country.
He's right about that. And look, here's how it's going to go down. If we do not pass the Save America Act, if we do not, and to be clear, we cannot pass the Save America Act with the filibuster intact. Period. Okay? You can make an argument about the talking filibuster, which Mike Lee, I'm going to play him here in a second. He does does try to push for that, but he also acknowledges and recognizes that we have to get rid of the filibuster, period. You know, it's not his preferred option, but it's, I think, the only real option, because the talking filibuster has very, very massive challenges that I think a lot of people don't understand what that would entail if we were to reimpose the talking filibuster. It would basically bring the Senate to a standstill. It's funny because the filibuster really was most useful when there were fewer people in the Senate, right? Again, in the middle 19th century. Once it started becoming such a challenge, you know, by the early 20th century, that's when they realized we got to figure this out. That's when they invoked the cloture rules, Senate Rule 22, I believe, and that was initially at 2/3. Then they switched it back. They brought it back to 3/5. So that's where we get the 60 vote filibuster to invoke cloture and to end a filibuster. It's not 60 votes for filibuster. I think that's another part that's misunderstood. People think that you need 60 votes to pass legislation. No, you need 60 votes to get the vote going, right? 60 votes for cloture so that you can not continue the filibuster and so that you can bring it to a vote on the floor. Anyway, so here's how it goes down. You know, if we don't remove the filibuster, then the Save America Act does not pass. If the Save America Act does not pass, the chances of Democrats taking control of the Senate anytime soon, like we'll assume this year, so in beginning of 2027, they win the 2026 election, they get their 51 votes, 52 votes, whatever. They're able to flip enough seats to where they have control. And if that doesn't happen in 2026, it's a good chance it will happen in 2028. We'll see. Again, you know, there's no way to tell how elections go. But without the Save America Act, they do have a chance. If the Save America Act passes, then I would say their chances drop tremendously as far as being able to cheat enough to take control of the Senate. They still have a chance of the House. But as far as taking control of the Senate in the the election, the maps tend to favor Republicans in that regard. But let's say we don't. Let's say Thune is not able to undo the filibuster. He's not able to pass the Save America Act. Democrats take control in 2026 election. They come in January 2027. They will remove the filibuster immediately. Okay? They've already tried it, as Vance noted. The only thing that stopped them was Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. That's it. If it wasn't for them, and both of them were required in order to stop it, if either one of them had buckled, then the filibuster would already be gone. The Supreme Court would have 15 members, or however many they would want to stuff in there. Everything would be in disarray right now. And chances are actually pretty darn good that President Trump would not have even been able to run for presidency. That's a discussion for another day. It's not even a discussion, really. That's a scenario that a friend and I played out that would that anyway. I'm not even going to go down that road right now. It's the past. It didn't happen. So here we are. We were given a reprieve. Praise God for that. But the Democrats will, in 2027, if they take control, they will remove the filibuster. And then it's pandemonium. We will not be able to get the people that we need into the positions that we need, whether it's cabinet members or, more importantly, judges, and most importantly, Supreme Court justices. That's what's at stake here. The very fabric of the Supreme Court is at stake if the Democrats are able to remove the filibuster before we can stop them. We have to preemptively remove the filibuster now. I'm going to go ahead and play Mike Lee because he's going to make the case for the talking filibuster. I just want to get it out there, and I know a lot of people would prefer that. You still want to go back to the times when there could be discussion, when there could be dialogue, where there could be compromise or bipartisanship. Fine. If you want to believe that, then let's go ahead and we'll stick with the talking filibuster, even though it's going to be a pain in the butt, and there are risks, like true risks involved with doing so. There are ways the Democrats could, if the Republicans aren't on their game, Democrats could sneak in amendments to the Save America Act that would act as poison pills and make it to where even Republicans couldn't vote for it anymore. But first, let's talk about Mike Lee.
That's the Democrat plan, and you put out a tweet last night about the two options Republicans have. What are they?
We have exactly two options. We can either, one, start enforcing our rules as they're written and require filibustering senators to speak and exhaust them and stay on a bill that is critical to our agenda until it passes. Or if we're not willing to do that, because that involves hard work, we have to nuke the filibuster. Now, I would strongly prefer the first. I think it's better to do it with the rules that we've got, because the rules that we've got actually ensure and protect robust debate. But what we can't have is this hybrid. We can't try to walk a middle ground between those two, saying, yeah, we're going to stick with the filibuster, with the 60-vote cloture standard, and then not do the work to get to cloture. That is a problem. So we've got a choice to make. If we don't make one of those two choices, use the talking filibuster or nuke the filibuster, we're going to be in big trouble in November.
I have to ask for our viewers, because it's week 11.
And to be fair, it's not just big trouble in November. It's big trouble for the remainder of American history. The remainder of our existence as a nation is on the line. That is not pure hyperbole. It's a little hyperbole. I might be a little hyperbolic in that regard. But I do see a scenario in which we don't remove the filibuster. We don't pass the Save America Act. The Democrats do take control of the House and the Senate. They start trying to impeach President Trump immediately. They get rid of the filibuster. They make it to where he can't get a Supreme Court justice that he wants in, and we start losing 1, 2, maybe even three spots. And then even if we don't, they decide, okay, let's get ready and let's go ahead and expand the Supreme Court, which, for whatever reason, it's one of the big question marks I've always had as far as the Constitution, why our founding fathers didn't put in an absolute limit of 9. There's always 9, only 9, and has to get back up to 9 if it ever drops below 9 at any point. I'm not sure why they didn't put that in there. Maybe that's something to consider for the future. Who knows? I think it would actually require a constitutional amendment, but whatever. Point is that they will pack the courts, pack the Supreme Court, start doing everything they can, getting ready for a Democrat, because the Democrat would almost certainly win in 2028. Okay, if we don't pass the Save America Act, it's going to be 2020 all over again. Whoever they get is going to, whether it's Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, whoever, Kamala Harris. Doesn't matter. They could throw up Oprah, and all they've got to do is do what they did in 2020, and then some, and all of a sudden they've got 87 million votes, and J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or Ron DeSantis or whoever gets obliterated. Now they have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, and that's it. That's all she wrote, folks. 2029 will be the beginning of the end for the United States of America. We will not recover from that. It will be over. And again, maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, but not by much in that regard. Not by much at all. So the question is, why haven't we done it? Because they know this. They being the senators, they know this. So what's stopping us? According to John Thune himself, Senate Majority Leader, he says that there are currently 4 senators who are opposed to ending the filibuster. But he won't say who they are. We can figure out who they are. That wouldn't be hard. Well, I could just tell you, it's Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, probably Rand Paul, even though he's one of the co-sponsors of the Save America Act. He is against ending the filibuster. Tom Tillis, because he just hates everything and everybody except for himself. Possibly, and then Susan Collins. Those would be the 5 candidates picked 4, and it's probably all 5. Okay, it probably is all 5. He's just saying 4 just because it's easy math, because if it's only 3, then he can get it passed. If you get 50 senators, there's 53 Republican senators. If 3 of them vote against ending the filibuster, he's got 50. J.D. Vance is 51. Done. Filibuster's over. So he might be saying 4 is the magic number, because it might be 5, it might be more. It probably is 4, to be clear. Okay? So then why won't he name them? Why won't he give us the opportunity to stop, to address them, to condemn them, to call their offices, to fax them, to do whatever it takes to pressure them as American citizens to do what we want? We want the government funded, okay? Vast majority want TSA's agents to get their paychecks, and Coast Guard and Secret Service and everybody else, okay? Vast majority want that. A strong majority want voter ID. So what's the problem? The biggest problem, and let's just, before I tell you what the biggest problem is, let's go to President Trump and his perspective on the matter. And it's a very important one that leads into my final point.
I want to go into those things, 5 points, and with the filibuster termination, you could vote them all in. The Republicans would have the vote.
President, Leader Thune told me that they do not have the votes to terminate the filibuster. How will you get around that?
But that's part of being a leader. You have to get the votes.
Do you have confidence in Leader Thune?
I like him so much. He's a high-quality person. And he told me the same thing. We don't have the votes. Well, he's only a couple of votes short, but that's what being a leader is. You have to get the votes. You have to get the votes. And those people will not be able to withstand the onslaught because Republicans and the country wants it. You know, it's polling at 87% voter ID. Think of it. We're talking about Save America, and it's not Save Act, it's Save America Act, because it's Saving America. Save Act, nobody knows what it's saving. It's the Save America Act. And you have to have it. You have to have it. The Save...
You have to have it. We need it. We need the Save America Act passed in order to save this nation. It is the truth. And now, I said that there's a reason why John Thune has not said who is blocking the removal of the filibuster. And that's because he's one of them. John Thune does not want the filibuster to end. Not on his watch. He knows. He's not stupid. Okay, the dude's actually pretty dang smart. But he's a Mitch McConnell guy. He was trained by Mitch McConnell. He's probably owned by the same people, same groups, the same foreigners, the same whoever, multiple groups, I would argue. He's probably owned by those same people. That was the price to pay. You know, make it to where they own him so that he could be Mitch McConnell's heir apparent. That was the deal that I believe he made. And I'm not trying to make a blind accusation, you know, out here. This is just what I'm assuming based upon his actions, because he's not acting like a guy who really has America's best interests in mind or at heart. He's acting like a guy who is participating in the obstruction that helps him personally. Because here's the thing, and this is the part that I don't think very many people understand. Mitch McConnell hated being Senate Majority Leader. He loved being Senate Minority Leader. It gave him the easy path. He could always be a good guy. He could always get stuff done without having to get anything done at all. He was able to push forward an agenda by working with Democrats, by working through the uniparty swamp. He was able to get an agenda that was beneficial to Beijing, beneficial to Big Pharma, both of which have a whole lot of control over him, and I would argue have the same people having a lot of control over Thune. They were able to get in there and talk big talk, but do nothing. That's why, the Senate Minority Leader is the easiest job in the world, because all you got to do is be a tough guy. You get to score a lot of points. It's like being a backup quarterback. The fans love you because you're not out there making mistakes. But once you actually get in there and get in the game, like John Thune is, like Mitch McConnell used to be, well, now you get to screw up. And that's what John Thune is doing. He's screwing up. But he's screwing up on behalf of the uniparty swamp. He's screwing up because he does not want the filibuster to end. He does not want the Save America Act to pass. I think he does want DHS funding to work, but even there, what's he supposed to do? He's just going to pander to the Democrats. They always say, well, yes, we have control, we have majorities, but they have the filibuster. Well, then take the filibuster away. President Trump nailed it when he said you got to be a leader. And I would argue that John Thune does not want to be a leader. If he did want to be a leader, he would come out and say, yeah, I've got currently 49 votes. I need one more. Okay, he claims there's 4, right? So I need one more vote plus J.D. Vance to get this done. The people that are currently not voting for it are boom, 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 and boom. So I just need one of them to love America, to stop hating America, because that's really what they're doing by obstructing this. They want Democrats to win. They want the United States of America to be destroyed. And if they don't see that that's the natural progression of things, if they don't end the filibuster and pass the Save America Act, if they don't understand that, then they truly are, full-blown stupid. because they're there. We can see it. You and I can see it, and we're far away. These people are there. They work with their quote unquote colleagues on the Democrat side. So we can argue, especially for people like Murkowski and Susan Collins and Mitch McConnell, that their allegiance is not to the United States of America. It's not even to the Democrat Party. It's worse than that. Their allegiance is to the uniparty swamp controlled by the deep state, controlled by the globalist elite cabal. And that makes them dangerous. That makes them destructive. But it still means that even if you get rid of all those three, you say those three, they just hate America. They want to destroy America. Okay. Well, then who else is there? Because we can not have those three vote to end the filibuster and still get rid of the filibuster. I just don't think John Thune is going to do it. I mean, I think that if he was going to do it, he would have done it already. He would have done it in order to pass funding for DHS. He would have done it to pass the Save America Act. He would have been the greatest hero to the Republican Party since, well, I mean, other than Donald Trump, I guess you'd have to go back to Reagan? I mean, he would be a bigger hero than Newt Gingrich during the Clinton years. I would actually appreciate him. I still wouldn't trust him, but I would actually appreciate him if he were able to do that. He claims that he can't, and yet he won't release the names. That tells me that it's not a matter of he can't, it's a matter of he won't. So here's what I propose. We don't have the power to get rid of John Thune. Okay? We don't. It's not something that we have any control over. It's voted on by the House majority at the time. And there are certain rules. Again, we're talking about rules. The filibuster, just like the filibuster, the Senate Majority Leader is not a constitutional issue. The Senate Majority Leader is not in the Constitution. He is granted power based solely on the rules of the Senate. Okay, well, there's also another rule of the Senate, that the President of the Senate is the Vice President. So I would propose that if they can't, if Thune is either incapable or unwilling to make things happen immediately, I'm talking about before the end of April. If he can't make things happen by then, you know what? I don't even want to give him that much time. April 15th, that's the deadline. We'll set it. Tax day. Tax day is John Thune Day. Either he's gotten his stuff figured out, he's gotten the filibuster eliminated, he's gotten the Save America Act passed, he's gotten DHS fully funded. Either those things happen by the April 15th, or J.D. Vance, with his constitutional role, unlike the Senate Majority Leader, the Constitution says that he is the President of the Senate as Vice President of the United States. He swoops in, takes control of the Senate, and starts figuring out, all right, what in the world is going on here? Why is there such a blockade? Who are the people that aren't voting for this? And what do we have to do to make them vote for it? Let's release their names. Let's make sure that red-blooded Americans are there protesting outside of their office, calling them, faxing them, emailing them, tweeting them, whatever, putting a huge, tremendous pressure on them, legal pressure. I'm not saying, going into Antifa direct action tactics. I'm saying just legally pressure them. Pressure their people. Make them understand. Chiefs of staff, figure out a way to get, if John Thune is correct, and if he's not lying, and if it really is only 4 people, that means we only need to convert 1. And of course, he would also have to be telling the truth that he wants to get it passed, which I doubt. But let's say that he's going to get involved, or he's going to be okay with it, and they're able to find 1 more. Okay, offer Tom Tillis a nice golden parachute. I'm not saying bribe him. Don't take that the wrong way. I'm saying that, look, this is your last year in the Senate. You can do the right thing or you can do the wrong thing. And whether or not you do the right thing or the wrong thing will determine what happens. Whether you get our endorsement or not for whatever it is that you want to do. You want to go to work for the defense contractors or whatever. I don't even know what he's going to do. I don't care. Figure it out. Give him a golden parachute. Figure out what to, how do you convince Rand Paul? Okay, Rand, you want to be president or vice president? Great. We'll help you. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. I don't want to make make any stupid suggestions here. When I say stupid, it's not that they're dumb, it's that they're like things that probably shouldn't be spoken out loud, right? But do whatever it takes. Have J.D. Vance take control of the Senate, get the filibuster removed, get DHS funded, get the Save America Act passed, figure out what other legislation we need to get passed between now and then, ramp up big time the confirmations, where we've slowed down dramatically on confirmations. Get everybody that you need confirmed. Let's start looking at which Supreme Court justice is going to be out next. We don't need to sit around and wait to figure out who's going to be their replacement. As soon as somebody retires, boom, already got somebody ready to go in sessions. Okay, the ball starts rolling before the first article is written about whoever's resigning from the Supreme Court, or is retiring, I should say. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do to streamline. We don't have a lot of time, folks. We don't. Okay, I mean, 1 year down, we got less than a year left before Democrats have control of either the House, the Senate, or both. Now, Lord willing, we can maintain majorities, but history says that we probably won't. And the House looks pretty vulnerable at this point. But we can and should be able to protect the Senate if we pass the Save America Act. So get it done. Give J.D. Vance it's not a gavel technically, but give J.D. Vance the control. Not give it to him. He already has control. He just has to invoke it. Senate Majority Leader, not constitutional, not a real position. So just, pretend like it doesn't exist. That's what we have to do. So April 15th, that's the deadline. John Thune either gets this fixed or gets pushed aside, and J.D. Vance comes in and fixes everything. I know these are all ideal scenarios we're talking about here, but I don't see another option. I mean, the only other option is that everything sucks, right? I mean, that's it. The Democrats will get rid of the filibuster at the next available opportunity. So what do? Preemptively strike. We don't give them the opportunity, because the only way they can give the opportunity in the near term to be able to get rid of the filibuster and start invoking their own, taking advantage of their own powers would be if we don't pass the Save America Act. So just pass it. And that way, Democrats won't control the Senate for, definitely, almost certainly not in 2026, probably not in 2028. Could be a very long time before the next time they get control. We'll see. Or we could do it Thune's way, which is to give control of the House and the Senate to Democrats, have them go through 2, 3, 4, 5 impeachments of President Trump, have them muddy the waters in the Supreme Court, have them just lay the path forward for a 2028 Democrat victory for presidency and the official beginning of the end of the United States of America. Thune's got a choice to make. Act now or move aside.
You mean total. Total is a pimp.
Whether you've been a prepper for a long time, or maybe you're just getting started, you're just looking around and thinking how crazy it is. We usually cover the basics. You get your food, you get your water, you get your ammunition. Don't forget your ammo. You get your battery chargers, solar battery chargers, or whatever. But a lot of times I think people will forget their meds. Okay, whether it's chronic meds, antibiotics, I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can stock up on that stuff. They go to the doctor, they go to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist said, oh, here's your 2-month supply or whatever. Well, you can actually stock up on a lot of these meds by going to jdrucker.com/meds. You'll talk to the good folks over at Jace Medical. They can get you a 12-month supply of certain prescription drugs. They can get you emergency meds, all sorts of good stuff, things that you may or may not need, but it's always good to have it on hand, because I guarantee you, even if you don't think you need it today, you might need it in the future. jdrucker.com/meds. A radical progressive Democrat, someone who is running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, someone who's considered to be a rising star amongst the Democrat communists, whatever you want to call them. What are they? The Democrat socialists, that's what they call themselves. They're Marxists, but hey, it is what it is. and a proud card-carrying member of the Red-Green Alliance that is sweeping across the United States, well, he should be in big trouble. I mean, his campaign should basically be over based upon leaked audio from a campaign meeting that he held. Unfortunately, legacy media isn't touching this one. Fox News is the only channel to even report on it after a blockbuster expose on Washington Free Beacon's website. Great investigation over there. They were able to get their hands on the audio from a campaign meeting. This is the closest staffers, and they were asking about what to do, what they should say regarding the death of the Ayatollah Khamenei back in February, late February. End of February, early March is when this audio was allegedly recorded, and his response was very telling.
So, this is going to destabilize the region. I also want to remind you guys that there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad today. So, I just don't want to comment on Khamenei at all. I don't think it's worth even touching that. And I'm just going to go straight at pedophilia, frankly. As a pedophile president, right, decides that he doesn't like the front page news, so he decides to take us into another war. There was a time when you all were talking about America first. This seems to be America last.
So here's a guy. Okay, so not only does he say, you know what, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to even mention the Ayatollah. But instead, we're going to pivot to the quote-unquote pedophile president. That's what he wanted to do. We're going to talk about the pedophile president and how he's starting a war because he wants to distract from the pedophile news. That this is what someone who wants to be a United States senator, this was his grand campaign strategy. Now, that alone should be enough to disqualify him, but let's take it a bit further. He went so far as to admit and acknowledge that he doesn't want to talk about the Ayatollah's death because people in Dearborn, Michigan, there's a lot of Muslims there, he said, and he doesn't want to anger them because he says that they're sad that the Ayatollah, who always used to say death to America, he says that these quote-unquote Americans are going to be sad that somebody who wants to destroy America is dead. Now, of course, he's referring to the Muslim population there. And yes, I will acknowledge that if the Ayatollah had survived and if he had gotten nuclear weapons, that Dearborn, Michigan probably wouldn't have been a place that he would have hit. He would have probably turned that into the U.S. Capitol if he had all that power. But he does not have that power. Never had that power. Was never going to get that power. And yes, now he's dead. But according to Dr. Abdul Al-Said, the best course of action is just to pivot to Donald Trump, blame him for everything, and of course call him a pedophile, which that alone, if he ever did, would be grounds for a lawsuit, because President Trump is not a pedophile. And I don't even think many Democrats would go down that road. I mean, this guy, for a doctor, he's an idiot, number one. Number two, he's clearly radicalized into thinking that would be a popular talking point. But maybe I'm naive. Maybe I just don't understand how radical leftists think. I think I do. I think I have an understanding based upon their actions, but who knows? Maybe I'm the one in the dark. But here's the thing. This would be damning, and nobody's talking about it. Fox News brought it up. Of course, Washington Free Beacon reported on it first. Some other conservative news outlets are bringing it up. We're talking about it on our show. But you won't find this over at the New York Times. I keep checking to see. I saw something that was released like an hour ago from the New York Times, and it wasn't about that. I mean, released about him. I'm going to refresh it one more time just to see. Let's see if anybody's talking about it. There's the Washington Free Beacon. This was 10 hours ago that it was at least picked up by Google News, probably older than that. New York Times, they reported on Dr. El-Said an hour, 16 minutes ago, but nothing about that. Fox News, of course, did cover it, so kudos to them. There's some local news. Michigan Vance, nope, they're not covering it. See who else. State News, another local. Nope, no coverage there. Detroit Free Press, nope, they're not touching. Nobody's touching. They're talking about him. They're just not talking about this. And you might say, well, it's still less than a day old. Maybe they will talk about it. I don't care. That if they do, this is a blockbuster story. The local news should be picking this up immediately. And yet they're not. They're covering it up. If they do have to report on it, they're going to report on it as, allegedly said some controversial things about Donald Trump. They won't mention the Ayatollah. They won't mention his desire to not anger or sadden the Muslims in Dearborn. They'll just say, this progressive candidate is in hot water for wanting to talk about Donald Trump. It's a free speech issue, and Republicans are going after him for it. It's like, what? But that's how they'll spin it. I assure you, that's exactly how they'll spin it. This is why you can't trust legacy media. Nobody should, because they are biased. And to be fair, let's call it what it is. You shouldn't trust any legacy media. That does include, Fox News, Newsmax, all those guys. Not because they're wrong, because they generally obviously side, they're right-leaning, we'll call them, but because they don't acknowledge it. There's the reason that I like sites like the Gateway Pundit or Breitbart, or even more mainstream ones like the Epoch Times. They flat out acknowledge, look, we're a right-leaning organization, we're a right-leaning company, we're a right-leaning publication. Fox News tries to dance in the middle, especially considering, the future Murdoch owners, the ones that are going to be running, they're Democrats. They were cheering when President Trump allegedly lost, had the election stolen from him. They hate President Trump. Okay, you got the vast majority of the news side at Fox News. They don't like President Trump at all. And then you've got the talking heads, the opinion people like Hannity and Laura Ingraham. They're pro-Trump, but they're just a small component. We like to say, oh, Fox News is conservative because of those handful of show hosts that are conservative. But when you look at every other aspect of them, they're not conservative, and they pretend to be. And I don't like the lack of transparency, nor do I like the two-sidedness. Washington Free Beacon, they are a great news outlet. They treat things very squarely, and they acknowledge that they lean to the right. They're not trying to hide that fact, and that's really what I want. This is one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of podcasts now. I didn't used to be. I always thought that there was more amateur journalism and commentary. Now I'm starting to realize, hey, it's the most honest journalism and commentary you can get. You might say, well, but what about investigative journalism? You don't get that out of podcasts. No, that's why you have people like Nick Shirley. That's why you have there's a rising group of young and aggressive journalists who are going out there knocking on doors. They're just carrying their GoPro or iPhone or whatever it is. Maybe they got a good microphone, but for the most part, they're getting public information. They're asking the right people the right questions. They're getting up in people's faces. They're doing it fearlessly, and they're going viral as a result. And that's a good thing. That combination of independent citizen journalists going out there and searching for the news, combined with podcasts, which are growing increasingly more quote-unquote corporatized, which normally would be a bad thing. And I think it is a bad thing for certain podcasts. But having a mild amount of funding so that those of us who are podcasting can actually focus on getting closer, getting more information, going out and talking to the people, getting better guests. There's nothing wrong with that. So, look, Joe Rogan makes a crap ton of money, right? And yet he's still down to earth. He still wears a t-shirt to the set. He still just hangs out and asks questions and says what he wants to say, and that's it. You don't like that style, but at least it's honest. At least it's not, ABC News or CNN or Fox News or anybody else pretending to be down the middle when they're definitely, absolutely, positively not. You don't lie to me about it. Just come out and say it. And that's why this Dr. El Said, Abdul El Said, that's why he isn't toast. He will probably continue on. Heck, he might get a bump out of it. You never know. He might get enough attention, enough press from at least insiders to say, hey, this guy's willing to fight. He's willing to stand up and call President Trump names. Let's nominate him as the guy. This is for those who aren't familiar with the race. This is to replace Senator Gary Peters, who's a Democrat, in a district that is in a state that voted for Trump. So even though they have two Democrat senators currently, Mike Rogers, who looks like he's almost certainly going to end up being the nominee on the Republican side, he lost by 20,000 votes in 2024, and he was running against Elisa Slotkin, so as an incumbent. So I'm very hopeful that this time around we can actually pick up this seat. And if it's Dr. Abdul El Sayed or who are the other people running? There's a lady. What's her name? It was Haley Stevens, current representative, and then there is the state senator Mallory McMorrow. So between those two plus Dr. Abdul El Sayed, those are the three that are most likely to get the nomination on the Democrat side. And they will be going up against Mike Rogers, and I think he's got a good chance against any of them. And I'm not a fan, to be clear, of Mike Rogers, but I'll take him over a Democrat any day. You know. So that's where we stand. Media's not going to talk about it. Dr. Abdul El Sayed can say whatever he wants, and they're just going to let it pass because he's a rising star. He's a progressive. He's a Muslim. He's part of the Red Green Alliance. He's untouchable in the eyes of legacy media.
It will shock you how much it never happened.
It seems like just about every conservative podcaster, show host, whatever, in today's podcastosphere has a gold sponsor of some sort. And the unfortunate reality is the vast majority of these gold sponsors will push what's called numismatic coins. The reason they do this, they push these quote-unquote collectible coins, is because they can charge extremely high margins on them. We're talking 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, or higher. As hard as it is to believe, that's why they're so focused on these collectibles, because they can build a false value into the price and get people to buy them, to roll over their IRA or whatever. I work with a company that specializes in just straight up bullion. Bullions, rounds, the stuff that you take it, you weigh it, you see what the price of gold or silver is, and that's how much it's worth. It's not about, oh my gosh, look at this picture of this whatever, whoever, somebody, something on the front. Oh, this is so great. This is amazing. It's going to be worth so much more than just your average silver round, which is what my guy likes to promote. Check him out. His name is Ira. He's a stud, and you can learn more from him by going to advisorbullion.com. That's advisor, BULLION, advisorbullion.com, or easy to remember, jdrucker.com/gold. That's probably the easiest way to do it. jdrucker.com/gold. Ira will walk you through. If you want to just pay cash, you just want to wire a few $1,000s and get it shipped discreetly to your door, and so you can put it in your safe, awesome. If you want to have a rollover or whatever for your retirement account, awesome. Ira can help you with all of that stuff. So check him out. Go to jdrucker.com/gold and get the real stuff. As preppers, we often think along the terms of sudden catastrophes, emergencies, natural disaster, war breaking out, or EMPs or solar flares or whatever. Yellowstone doing its thing. We don't always, and we should, start thinking more along the lines of the creeping catastrophes that can pop up that could take months or even years to metastasize until they become full-blown challenges. And when the dominoes are pushed, sometimes you don't get to see the full picture until it's almost done. And at that point, sometimes it can be too late, which is why we're doing today's show based not on that sudden catastrophe, but on the creeping one. And we are, as I'm recording this, we may be in the middle of one currently. Now, keep in mind, if you're listening to this in the distant future, let's say things go very well with the Iran war and the looming food crisis, the current energy crisis, these things are alleviated and things go back to normal, you should still listen, because even though we're going to be basing this upon the prospects of today's world, if this does get fixed, then everything still applies. In other words, you can experience this type of creeping catastrophe at any point. Yeah, and this is very different from the way that the world was before. You would be something, for example, like war. War could break out, cause economic strife, cause a loss of a massive loss of life. People having to leave their jobs, quit their jobs, change their jobs because their jobs are no longer important. We saw a lot of that in World War II, where a lot of factories were turned into basically war machines. But today, things are very different because we can experience something today that has a dramatic impact on things in the future, especially when it comes to food, medicines, and things that are interlinked within this very complex and yet very brittle supply chain that drives Western society today. So let's assume that the Iran war, because as I'm recording this, the Iran war is still going on. The Strait of Hormuz has not been opened up, and we are looking at major challenges for spring planting of food, energy prices. We're seeing some countries, especially in Asia, the Philippines, their fuel costs have skyrocketed so high that people just can't afford it at all. They're just walking. We here in the United States of America, we're experiencing higher gas prices, but it's not catastrophic yet. Other places are experiencing tremendous increases in the cost of fuel, the cost of petrol, liquid natural gas, whatever. So, with that said, not every emergency arrives with sirens or flashing headlights. There's not always going to be a mandatory evacuation or a National Guard checkpoint. Sometimes the catastrophes will creep along. Shelves will just grow a little bit emptier each week. Prices might go up a little bit more, more than they were last month. And even though we'll feel it, we'll notice it, because in this hyper aware world with mobile devices and AI and internet and all this stuff, we can't miss it. And people will talk about it, and they'll turn everything into a political discussion. But we can become complacent because it's just repetitive. It's like we keep hearing, oh, food prices going up, gas prices going up. But then we don't take notice that it really is digging into our savings. It really is harming us dramatically. And then all of a sudden, we become dependent. And that's what we're going to try to alleviate today. Right now, we are experiencing fertilizer prices going up dramatically, availability going down dramatically, and as a result, food production is almost certainly going to go down for the spring harvest. And we're not going to feel the effects necessarily at the grocery store immediately. This is something that's going to start hitting us over the next, we'll say, 5, 6, 7 months. That's when it's going to be really starting to hit us. So being prepared before then is extremely important. And I wouldn't say wait 5, 6, 7 months. The time to prepare is now, because there's going to be other things that are going to be affected immediately, such as, well, pretty much anything that has to be transported. Because when you have gas prices going up, especially diesel, higher oil prices, higher shipping costs, it does have an effect. And that does include not just your frivolous buys on Amazon or toilet paper or anything like that. We're talking about other things such as drugs and pharmaceuticals. And then there's the potential. I don't even want to put a word to it because it is ugly. But let's say that relations between the United States and China deteriorate as a result of whatever, because we are in such an odd geopolitical scenario following Venezuela, with Iran, with China being choked off in many ways, with their economy already floundering, much worse than what we're being told, because they are very aloof when it comes to revealing their current actual status. We can assume that they are in desperation mode, and they could try to use some of the points of leverage against us. One of those obviously is rare earths. We've talked about that many times, but another one is the pharmaceutical aspect. Keep in mind, we are so dependent on China for our pharmaceuticals. It's disgusting. It's a shame that we became so dependent. Okay, it wasn't necessary. It was just a way because big pharma, big insurance, big hospitals, that that entire racket is geared towards money printing. And as a result, China became the beneficiary, and now they hold all the strings. I mean, about 90% of the ingredients used in our pharmaceuticals today come from China, and that's not easy to replace, not in a short period of time. We should be working towards replacing it over an extended period of time, and that can be done, but I don't know if we're going to have enough time, especially if the aforementioned creeping catastrophe hits sooner rather than later. In other words, pharmaceuticals can become a major issue. And then, of course, there is the chance, the risk of broader volatility hitting us, hitting the United States, hitting the world. It's not just about Iran. People are now talking in terms of potential for World War III. You've got North Korea that has been supplying the missiles that it wasn't. I think a lot of analysts were caught off guard when Iran was able to fire two ballistic missiles that could travel 2,500 miles. We weren't expecting that. I mean, at least I wasn't. A lot of analysts that I was listening to, they weren't expecting it either. We're now finding out that those came from North Korea. Oh my goodness, axis of evil talk. Here it comes. But it's real. And China's involvement, Russia's involvement, still have the Ukraine war with everything that's happening. And I'm not trying to be chicken little fearmonger here. I'm just telling you, you look around, see the writing on the wall. The message is pretty ugly. So let's assume that there is going to be some sort of massive long-term disruption when it comes to food, fuel, pharmaceuticals, the important things that we need on a regular basis. And not just fuel for your gas, we're talking about electricity, all sorts of, and which can then have an impact on water distribution. I mean, the plate is set, the table is set, I should say, for something ugly. So what do? We prepare. We prepare ourselves. If the nation, if our states, if the world governments, if they're going to go down these crazy paths, so be it. We don't have to be their victims. We don't have to be dependent on them, as long as we are ready for this potential inevitability. And there are amazing ways to do it that don't require going and digging a hole in Tennessee in some place where you dig holes. I don't know, building a bunker and hiding away for 30 years. It doesn't have to be that extreme, though it can be. There's nothing wrong with that either. Getting off grid, I've told people that if you have the ability to get off grid, or the very least to be ready to get off grid, to have your off grid bug out location set up and ready to go, you should. If you have those types of resources, those means, then I would say now would be a good time to do it. If you're like the rest of us, where we're just trying to make sure that our pantries are full, well, there are things that we can and should do in order to prepare. We tried to get us some footage in Los Angeles to depict the apocalypse, but there were just too many people, so we had to turn to artificial intelligence, which defines the apocalypse as apparently slow motion objects coming out of the ground for some reason, and us standing there in the middle of the street depressing our children before oddly walking away from them. I guess that's the apocalypse, according to AI, along with marbles, glass on the ground blowing away. But hey, at least we'll be eating well, because we will have real food, not AI food, real food from Heaven's Harvest, which you can get by going to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food. It's fantastic food, number one. Number two, it'll give you hope, even if you're filthy. I mean, even if your hair is unkempt and things are crazy, you can still look up and know that you're buying from a Christian company at jdrucker.com/food. So I have 5 common sense things that you can and should be doing right now to prepare. And many of you are already very well prepared. Don't tune out now just because you already have the basics covered, because I may be able to tell you something that maybe you weren't aware of, maybe you weren't thinking about. Every prepper's plan is different, and it should be, because everybody's situation is different. Where you live, who you live with, what your needs are, what your resources are, all of these are variables that change. So I am a firm believer in making sure that everybody has a survival plan that is geared around various situations. But the one thing that we don't normally plan for in our survival plan. We have the bug out, what's our rally point? What are we going to do in case of this? What are we going to do in case of that? But the creeping catastrophe of which we are in the middle of possibly seeing forming around us, that's something that there's not necessarily a plan for. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips that you'll be able to use. But before we go down that road, I want to make something crystal clear. The most important thing that anybody can do, and I would say this is the only thing that's required, is that you get right with God, that you secure your personal salvation, work with your family and friends to help them secure theirs. It's not hard. It just takes belief in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. It takes repentance, baptism. It takes certain aspects. It takes a rebirth. It's not just a matter of going to church one day and randomly saying a prayer and writing it and putting a date on it in your Bible and all of a sudden everything's hunky-dory. It really is you have to be born again. And people will say, oh, but it's not works. I'm not suggesting that it has to be works, but works do demonstrate your faith. They are a sign that you are different, that you're not just a believer that Jesus Christ existed and died on the cross for your sins. That's a start, but there's a lot of I would say, and Jesus even speaks about the entities that they know he exists, they know he's real, they believe in him, they're still not going to go to heaven. That's for sure. We don't want to be those people. So go all the way. Don't just sit there and say, I said my prayer 4 years ago, I'm good to go, I can go sin and do whatever I want. If you have a truly repentant heart, if you are born again, then you will not want to sin. Period. And if you get tempted, and if you do commit sins, which we all do, then that's still bad, but it's not a reckoning. It's not the end for you. So that is the most important thing. You can, if you're struggling with that part, the rest of it doesn't matter. Okay? Seriously. I mean, being able to survive a little bit longer in a world, a broken world, and then spending eternity in hell, that's not good. Okay? So again, the most important thing that you can do is spiritual preparedness. With that out of the way, assuming that you do have that one covered, let's get into some practical, we'll call them secular world, this world's version of preparedness. So step one, build a rotating 90-day pantry buffer. Notice I didn't say like a survival pantry or a survival, get a bunch of freeze-dried food and all that stuff. That's important for the longer-term stuff. But getting a calorie-dense, shelf-stable food supply for your family that will last for 90 days if there's lockdowns, if anything happens to where the supply chain has a complete and total temporary breakdown that hopefully won't last longer than 3 months, but if it as long as it can last under 3 months, you should be fine as long as you have your pantry in a rotating format. And that's super important. I think a lot of times I had a friend who said, yeah, I had to throw out like basically an entire shelf of food because it was like 5 years expired. I totally forgot about it. It's like, how could you forget about it? First, that was my first question. My second question is, why would you be buying food that you can forget about? The most important part of your pantry should be that it's food that you do want to eat, okay? Food that you will actually use. Beans and rice are great, but if you're not somebody who's eating a bunch of beans and rice, then, that's, what are you going to do? Just change your life altogether, change your family's life altogether, and just eat beans and rice every day? Now, I don't want to poo-poo on that if that's what your plan is, because I know I think it was even Joe Rogan who came out and said that was his plan. He eats normal, great food all day, every day, but if things hit the fan, then he's got like a couple of years supply of beans and rice, and he'll just cook that every day until things get back to normal or until he can go out hunting and get him some elk or something. You make your plan the way that you want to do it, but here's what I would recommend. Build a 90-day rotating pantry. Eat your food from this pantry. As it's rotating, as you're eating the food, you're replacing that food in the back. Okay, it's not terribly difficult, and if you're even marginally organized, it's not difficult at all. It can actually be very easy. Get the foods that you want to eat. Okay, go beyond just the beans and rice. Get you some pasta. Get you some canned protein. I know that the canned chicken, you get the right sauce, and even canned chicken can actually be pretty darn good. Get you some food that's not necessarily super healthy. I'm not a fan of this, by the way, but you can get some foods that will last. We'll say they have a shelf life of at least 6 months to a year, preferably longer. That aren't necessarily the best for you. Okay, macaroni and cheese ain't very good for you, especially out of the box. It's ultra processed. It's got nasty ingredients, but by golly, if that's what it takes, and if you can stomach that and eat that, once a week, so be it. Preferably, you're using real foods, and that would be not just for the sake of your pantry or your preparedness, but just for life in general. Getting real quality foods, taking and making your own bread if you can on a regular basis, making your own pasta. These are things that many Americans can do, and I would recommend doing it. One thing to note on a 90-day pantry is that the oils, they're the hardest to preserve. They're the hardest to keep long term. Most of them will last if you do it the right way. As long as they're unopened, kept in a cool, dark place, most of them will last for longer than that the 90-day window. But make sure that you're not letting rancid oil sit there for an extended period of time. Use the oil, okay? And you'll need it. People say, I just won't use oil, I won't use butter. Yeah, there's something to keep in mind is that you desperately need fat. Fat is the one thing that is, number one, it's hardest to preserve long term, as I noted, but also it's the one that gets forgotten the most. I mean, even if you have to get powdered milk for an extended period of time, make sure it's powdered whole milk. Number one, make sure that you have a proper rotation. If I recall, even properly sealed, quote unquote, survival whole milk as well as survival eggs, powdered eggs, both of them have approximately a 10-year shelf life. And then we're talking about the properly sealed, the big buckets that are designed for long-term storage. Once you got about 10 years to start using them before they go bad, which is plenty if you're talking about a 90-day pantry. Okay. Number 2, secure your water. Make sure. I've said this a million times. I'll say it again. You can go without food for 3, 4, 5 weeks. You can go without a lot of things for an extended period of time, but you can't go without water for longer than 2 or 3 days. They say 3 days is the number. I've seen people that get desperately dehydrated and extraordinarily sick after 2 days without water. I've actually not felt very good myself after a single day with zero liquids, so not a good thing. Make sure that you have a way to store your water, and make sure that you have a way to secure water. Depending upon the state that you're in, the city that you're in, there are laws about water collection from rainwater. Sometimes some people live in areas where there's abundant rain, some don't. So if you live in an area where you've got a river or a lake close by, make sure that any water that you collect, that you are filtering it properly. And I'm not talking about a Brita filter, okay? Get yourself a good gravity filter, Berkey or something. At the very least, get you those life straws. Getting enough water for a family of 4 or 5 might take a while with the life straws, but whatever it takes to do it. Okay. And then we will do an episode at some point about proper water sterilization, filtration, cleaning the waters. If you don't have the access to just a Berkey filter, gravity filter, you should, by the way. They are relatively expensive too. I think it's been a while since I bought mine, but I think they're $200, $300, $400. They're not cheap, but they are definitely worth it. And the filters can last, if I recall, I think they're 5,000 gallons each, and you can have 2 to 4 in there at any given point, so they should be able to last for a while. That's super important. A gallon a day is the number per person. So if you got a family of 4, that means that for 90 days, that's 360 gallons of water. That's a lot of water to secure and to store away. There are tanks that you can get that are big enough. Tanks that you can keep in your garage that are basically look like big water heater tanks. You can also get the external ones. They're these big, huge blue water tanks that will hold like 3,000 gallons. Those are good to have. At the very least, make sure that and I'm a big fan of this, and a lot of preppers will tell me that I'm crazy, but I'm a big fan of bottled waters of various sizes. gallon bottles of water. Just make sure that they are in the proper containers. You don't want the cheap microplastic filled containers. You want good, high quality, whatever the PFAS things. I don't have it in front of me. My wife handles that part. She's the water person. She drinks so much water every day. She's a fish. I don't, but she does. So she makes sure to utilize the proper food grade stackable jugs, and having, of course, regular bottled water that you can get at Costco or wherever. That I believe is important too, because it makes it transportable. It makes it it's bad in that it creates a lot of waste, and especially if you are in a very desperate situation, accumulating bottles of water can be a very, very bad thing, or empty bottles of water, I should say. So, but come up with a plan. You might be close enough to a lake or a river to where you don't have to worry too much about it. You might have the ability to store away large amounts of water. But if you don't, and if you're in an area where it doesn't rain or you can't collect rainwater for whatever reason, then you got to figure something out. And that means stacking the containers full of water. Number 3, energy and fuel awareness. Know that if things continue to degrade, then electricity bills are going to go up. There could even be at some point electricity rationing. They're talking about it currently. They're talking about doing things for the sake of climate change and for energy rationing. They're talking about like turning off all the lights in New York City after like 11 p.m., which is disastrous. Anybody who's ever been to New York City knows that you don't want the lights to be going out. If you're walking the streets at 1 a.m., which I have personally done, and I'm a dude, I would hate to be a girl alone walking the streets at 1 a.m. with no lights. Even if with lights, it's not a good idea. But without lights now, it's a disaster waiting to happen. But that's politics. That's what they want to do. It's all for the climate, right? But assume that electricity is not going to be cheap, that gasoline is not going to be cheap, that if you use gas heaters, liquid natural gas, that none of it's going to be cheap. So figuring out cost-effective ways to deliver the energy that you need. It could be solar panels. Okay, you can get they're not cheap either, but you can get a decent solar panel set up with generators and backup supplies and the panels themselves for hundreds, oftentimes thousands of dollars, depending upon the size. But they do make a lot of sense, and it's good to have a backup as well. I like to have 2 batteries available at all times, one charging, one working. And so in that situation, that's a blessing that I have. I would recommend getting something similar or even better. Then there's the idea of cooking. Now, there's one thing that, depending upon where you are and the abundance of sun that you have and your situation, I'm a fan of solar cookers because they don't require anything, right? Solar cookers, they usually come in the form of a tube, and you take this tube. It's a metal tube. You open it up, you lay in your meat, your vegetables, or whatever, and it takes hours to get it all cooked, but it does get it all cooked, right? And so I'm a fan of those because you have no need to burn anything. Sometimes we're in situations where you don't want to burn it. You don't want to draw attention to yourself through smoke, right? And if you don't have, say, a propane stove or something that wouldn't produce the smoke, you could be in big trouble if you're stuck with firewood trying to get your morning coffee going. So solar ovens are a good idea, in my humble opinion. You've also got the crank versions. I had looked into at one point doing one of those. What do they call the bicycles? The stationary bikes that can generate energy. That's a lot of work. Okay, a lot of work to generate energy, and a lot of work means you're expending a lot of calories, and expending a lot of calories means that you need more food. It can be, depending on the situation, that can actually be counterproductive. But find ways. I mean, if you can get your get your windmills situated in your backyard at your homestead. Awesome, right? But yeah, and to keep energy in mind. Number 4, skills. Skills. You need to be able, and this is something that, regardless of whether it's for future creeping catastrophes or sudden catastrophes or the apocalypse, you should be accumulating skills. You should turn this into like a lifestyle thing, maybe even like a hobby where you learn gardening, you learn foraging, you learn how to repair your vehicle or your generator or your washing machine or whatever it is. And you should be doing this on a regular basis. You should learn about canning, dehydrating. And this is one guy. Yeah, I'll tell the story. I'm hesitant because he'll know, if he's listening, he'll know that I'm talking about him. But it was embarrassing because here he was, he was going out. He was fancied himself a hunter. He was going to go out and hunt, and he was going to learn how to live out in the wild, and if necessary, and he was going to get him a cabin, and he got all this stuff prepared. And he's like, man, I'm tired. He calls me one day. He's, man, I am so tired. I'm like, what? He's like, I just had to drag a deer like 3 miles. It's like impossible. It took me like 6 hours, and it was so hard, and I'm never doing that again. I'm like, why didn't you just field dress it? He's like, what do you mean? Anyway, learn field dressing, learn skills, because you're not, today I think a lot of people, we don't learn the skills that we used to learn because we already have them accessible to us. It's not quite like the Matrix where they just upload it to your brain, but it's not far off, because many Americans, many people across the globe basically utilize their phones as our brain. We don't need to know anything because we can just ask our phones to tell us the answer to any question that we have. You need to learn how to, do this. You need to learn where you are physically. You've got GPS. We have so many amenities, and far too many people have become completely dependent upon those. So be ready. Just ask yourself, when you're doing something, what would you do in this situation if you didn't have the phone and the wealth of human knowledge via the internet available at your fingertips at all times? How would you navigate? How would you know, what to do in this situation, what to do in that situation? Don't be dependent on your phones. That's not to say that, I'm not saying to put your phones down and never use them. I'm saying ask yourself those questions. What would you do in this situation? And figure out, learn the skills that would, what I call an analog world. If we do have certain catastrophes and we do have to go back to an analog world, you will be very thankful. You'll be like, man, Rucker, I am so glad you told me to learn how to do this, because now I'm applying it. And you'll try to send me an email and it won't work because emails will be gone at that point. But hey, I don't care. I'm not looking for kudos. I'm just telling you, be ready for certain situations. Know how to do things. Acquire the skills. And again, if you have to turn it for the sake of whatever, making it feel right, if you have to make it a hobby, so be it. Learn how to make pemmican. Okay? That's your first homework of the day. Now, will you ever have to do it? Probably not, but you might. And it might be a very good tool for you to use someday. We'll see. Last but not least, number 5. Again, if we're talking about a apocalyptic world, if we're talking about just supply chain shortages, people are desperate. You have to be able to protect yourself. You have to be able to protect your wealth, protect your resources, protect your property. It's not just about having guns. It's also about having ways that can go against the changing financial dynamic. We do know, if you've read your Bible, we do know that if we are in the end times, then there will be an alternative economic system that is around whenever all this stuff happens. But even, let's say that you don't believe we're in the end times, it's off in the distant future, it still makes sense to have a good financial situation. And I'm not talking about, go convert everything into crypto, or go buy a bunch of gold or silver, or go, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about just becoming as debt-free as possible, okay? That's the first step. And you eliminate every possible amount of debt. If that means that you got to cancel your Netflix and cancel your gym membership that you're probably not using, so be it. Save money. Do what is necessary to pay off your bills and to get rid of your debts. You don't want to be a debtor in a crap hits the fan situation. You don't want to owe anybody anything. And then, when you got all that situated, great. You want to go buy Ethereum and some stable coins and put some gold coins and silver bars in your safe. Awesome. Great. I'm all in favor of that, okay? But don't go do that and get deeper into debt. The currency of the future, I truly believe this. The currency of the future will be one that's controlled by government and another that is basically that is between individual people. The one that's between individual people will be more of a barter style system. And then anybody who doesn't have the tools to barter, or we'll start with them. Anybody who doesn't have the bartering materials, they will eventually have to go to the world government run version of whatever the economy looks like. Okay, that's option. That's possibility number one. But there's another possibility. Let's say, you know what, you got plenty of ammo, you got plenty of this, you got plenty of that, you got food, you can barter into the future. You may not even need to barter. If you have a lot of debt, then they are going to come to collect. Who are they? Whoever they are, they are who they are. And you don't want to owe them, because they will seize your property. They'll seize what you have. They will do everything they can. And you can say, well, I'll fight them. Okay, great. Then that still sucks. Wouldn't it just be better to not owe anybody anything? To be basically debt invisible because you don't owe anybody anything? And then you can build up the things to barter, and then you can be completely independent from the world beast system? Wouldn't that be awesome? And let's say, oh, well, you're still listening and you're not a Bible-believing Christian. Okay, we'll call it the New World Order system. Whatever system you want to call it. Okay, the Illuminati system. Okay, just give it a name. But you don't want any debts. So that is, up there. It's the right mindset to have. And let's say there's no catastrophe. Guess what? Let's say if everything goes back to normal, it's all hunky-dory. Well, you're still in good shape if you have eliminated your debt. As a matter of fact, you might be in even better shape. Debt was something that was created to, especially in the current system, the current situation we have in Western society, particularly in the United States of America. Debt was a control mechanism. It was a way to force people to get plugged in to a system that they otherwise wouldn't have chosen to plug themselves into. It was a way to promote, modern day feminism. It was a way to make it to where, we got to work and 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 work so that we can make more money and buy more things and make more money and buy more things and make more money and buy more things. Live the lifestyle, keep up with the Joneses, all that stuff. It was, on a personal level, I think it was the worst mistake that Western society made. Well, the worst mistake was going against the Bible, but that's a different story. You get the idea. So eliminate your personal debt as much as possible. You will thank me either way, whether there's an emergency or not. So again, I have to be very clear about this. And notice I didn't say get your guns or anything like that. That should be a given. And you should already be heading down that road. Okay, protecting yourself, protecting your family, having the appropriate tools necessary and the amount of ammunition that's required, that's a no-brainer. I shouldn't even have to mention that. And that's also something that's relatively static. In other words, outside of cleaning and maintaining your firearms and your supplies, it's not like, oh my gosh, we got to keep rotating out the ammunition. No, once you got it, you're good. Okay? Keep it clean, keep it dry, keep it safe, keep it secure, keep your skills honed, and that's it. So that's why I didn't. Well, and if you want to go ahead and throw that in as number 6, fine. That's the other thing you should do, but I assume that most of you are doing it already. The biggest and most important thing to take away from all this is not to be scared, not to be fearful. Understand that, yes, prices are very likely to go up, whether the Iran war continues or not. But I would argue that as of right now, as I'm recording this, it is March 30th, 2026. As of right now, let's say that the Strait of Hormuz opens up completely and forever starting tomorrow. There's still already been enough damage done to have a dramatic impact on worldwide fuel and food supplies. We're going to feel some pain. The question is, how much of it will we feel? And here in the United States of America, we might be insulated in many ways on both sides, on both the food and the fuel side. But we're not completely immune. And especially if there starts to be catastrophes across the world as a result, then we are still going to feel it. You can be as America first as you want, and I am very much in favor of America first, but we are not immune to challenges across the globe. Like I mentioned before, 90% of our pharmaceutical ingredients come from China. Rare earths, we are still dependent. How much do we offshore to India? How much do we offshore anywhere? And if they're experiencing these catastrophes as a result of things that have already happened in the Strait of Hormuz, in Iran, as well as Ukraine, as well as the whole geopolitical situation, then yes, we will be impacted. I'm not trying to stir up fear. I'm just trying to tell you that it makes sense. It behooves you to get into the prepper mindset going forward, make it a lifestyle perspective. And if nothing happens, praise God. And if something happens and you're prepared for it, praise God. And if something happens and you're not prepared for it, well, praise God, but you're not going to be happy with your decisions. So no matter what, stay hopeful. And as always, praise God.
The cadet's logic is sound.